I moved to this small town in Washington a couple of weeks ago after my divorce. I thought a change of scenery would help me heal. I rented an old cottage on the outskirts, hoping it would be a peaceful escape. The first few nights were quiet. I heard only the rustling of trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. But then, on my second night, I woke up to muffled voices. They seemed to seep through my walls. I figured it was just my neighbors having a late-night gathering. I didn't think much of it. As days passed, the whispers grew louder. They felt like they were trying to tell me something. It made me uneasy. Sometimes I thought I could even make out words, but every time I focused, they faded away. My neighbors started to catch my attention too. There was an older woman who often stood at her window, staring blankly out into the night. I caught glimpses of her, but every time I got close, she disappeared. Then there was laughter. Children's laughter echoed from the woods nearby. I listened closely, but I never saw any kids. The laughter was bright and carefree, but it chilled me. I would sit on my porch, staring into the trees, feeling watched. I told myself it was just my imagination. One evening, feeling brave, I decided to go into town to meet some locals. I visited a small diner. It felt heavy inside. Everyone seemed glued to their plates. I introduced myself, but the responses were distant. Their eyes didn't meet mine. It felt strange. I tried asking about the town, but the conversation didn't flow. It felt like they were hiding something from me. That night I heard the voices again. They sounded urgent now, like they were calling for help. My heart raced. I felt torn, wanting to know what was happening but scared of what I might find. The laughter returned, echoing through the woods again. For some reason, I felt drawn to it. Then I saw a figure under the old oak tree in my backyard. He was just standing there, staring at me. I tried to call out, asking if he was okay. He didn't answer. My heart pounded in my chest. I stepped closer, but he vanished. Suddenly, I felt a whisper right in my ear. "Why don't you come play?" I froze. I turned around, gripping the porch railing. There was nobody there. I felt chilled to the bone. Each night since, the whispers grew louder. I found myself sitting on the porch, unable to sleep. I wanted to escape, but something pulled me back. The laughter continued, ringing in my ears and my mind. I knew this wasn't just the normal sounds of a quiet town. I could no longer tell what was real. Was this just a quaint little town, or was something more sinister lurking below the surface? I felt I was getting closer to the truth, but with each night, the town's secrets felt bigger and darker. I was scared, and with every passing moment I could feel the walls closing in. The next day I decided I needed answers. I couldn't shake off the feeling that the townsfolk knew something I didn't. I made my way back to the diner, determined to dig deeper. As I entered, the familiar heaviness settled on my shoulders. I spotted the older woman from my cottage, the one who seemed to be watching the night. She was sitting alone in a corner booth. I approached her cautiously. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound friendly. "I'm new here. I just wanted to ask you about the town." Her eyes flicked to mine, and for the briefest moment I felt a connection. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly over her coffee. "There are things not meant for outsiders." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Panic welled up in me. I needed to know what she meant, but just as I opened my mouth, she looked over my shoulder, her gaze clouded with fear. "You should leave," she warned, her voice barely above a breath. Then just as quickly she stood and walked out of the diner, leaving me bewildered and gripping the edge of the table. I turned to see what had frightened her, but no one was there. My heart sank. Was it because of me? Or something else? I left the diner, a knot tightening in my stomach. The laughter echoed again, a distant chorus that seemed to dance around me. I walked back to my cottage, my pace quickening. I felt eyes on me, shadows lurking at the periphery. The townsfolk's distant stares flared up in my mind. What did they know about me? About the town? Reaching my cottage, I could feel the chill settle in. That's when I noticed a piece of paper stuck under my front door. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. It was a hand-drawn map. A red circle marked an area in the woods behind my house. My heartbeat quickened. They wanted me to go there. I couldn't ignore the urge that pulled at me. Was it linked to the laughter, the voices, or was it a trap? I debated whether to follow it, but I felt that if I didn't, the whispers would only grow louder, more demanding. As twilight crept in, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the woods. The trees loomed, casting long shadows that danced ominously. The laughter grew fainter, replaced by a low, dreadful hum that vibrated through the ground. I pushed deeper, guided solely by the fiery curiosity mixing with fear. Then everything went still. The laughter faded completely. I aimed my flashlight ahead, the beam piercing the thickening darkness. I could barely catch my breath when I spotted it, a small clearing with a stone altar at its center. I stepped closer, my heart dropping. The altar was covered in remnants of offerings, wooden toys, frayed ribbons, and flowers long wilted. I stepped back, realizing I was not alone. Figures emerged from the trees, eyes glimmering with a knowingness that chilled me to the bone. I wasn't just in the woods anymore. I had crossed into something else. And the whispers promised me their secrets were about to unfold. The figures stepped forward, their faces obscured by the shadows. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. There were 5 of them, all dressed in worn, earth-toned clothing that blended with the forest. Their eyes seemed to see straight through me, as if peeling back layers I had thought safely hidden. "Do you hear them?" one of them asked. Her voice was both soft and sharp, like the edge of a blade. I didn't respond, unable to speak, so she pointed to the altar. "They're waiting. They always wait." My breath quickened. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with something ancient and terrifying. I could see around the clearing now. It was littered with more than just offerings. There were markings on the ground, symbols that pulsed faintly in the dark. Ones I recognized from my dreams of the nights past. The group exchanged glances, and a sense of urgency seemed to wash over them. "You're not like the others," a man spoke, stepping slightly closer. His features were rugged, yet his eyes held a depth that unnerved me. "You were drawn here for a reason." "Why?" I finally managed to ask. My voice trembled, but I needed answers. "Because you seek the truth," he replied. "The truth of this town and what it hides. But some truths come at a price." His words hung in the air, heavy and thick. A chill crept up my spine. What price? The thought sent flashes of all the townspeople's stares through my mind. They weren't just indifferent, they were watchful. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, finding courage I didn't know I had. The flickering flashlight caught the glint of something shiny in the grass, and I instinctively bent to pick it up. It was a small metal pendant, old but familiar. Tension rippled through the figures. "Put that down," the woman warned, her eyes wide. But it was too late. The moment my fingers curled around the pendant, a sound erupted from the woods, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to resonate from beneath the earth. The ground shook slightly, and I stumbled back. The figures stepped closer together, forming a barrier between me and the darkness beyond. "You've awakened it," the man whispered. Fear etched on his face. "You need to leave now." I turned to run, but the trees were closing in around me, their branches twisting unnaturally. Panic clawed at my throat. I could almost hear the whispers rising again, sharper, like knives cutting through the air. Just as I reached the edge of the clearing, the laughter returned, echoing louder than before. It morphed into a cacophony of voices, all chanting my name. My heart raced. This was about me. Whatever was happening here was tied to me. Then a figure emerged from the shadows behind the altar. It was tall and cloaked in darkness. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its intensity. It raised a hand, and the chanting abruptly ceased. The woods fell silent. All eyes were on me. In that moment, I knew I was teetering on the edge of something colossal. I took a step back, realizing the glimmering pendant still lay in my palm. I had to decide. Would I confront whatever this was, or find a way to escape the grip of the town's secrets? That's when I heard it again, a low whisper that grazed my ear like a lover long lacked. "Join us." The whisper echoed in my mind, and for a brief moment I felt drawn to it. What did it mean to join them? But as the figure stepped further into the dim light, my instincts screamed at me to run. Its presence was suffocating, an invisible weight pressing down on my chest. "Don't listen to it," the man shouted, his voice breaking through my fog of fear. It broke the tension, and I focused on him instead. The other figures shifted, their urgency transforming into a protective stance, but my heart pounded too loud to think rationally. I took another step back, my foot barely hitting the ground before a piercing howl erupted from the woods, chilling me to the bone. That sound was primal, resonating with something deep within me. I didn't want to provoke whatever lay hidden just beyond the tree line. "Run!" the woman cried out. She looked more scared than I felt. I turned and sprinted. The branches snagged at my clothes and scratched my skin as I darted through the forest. I hardly dared to look back. The chanting, my name echoing in the air, faded slightly, but the weight of their gazes still bore down on me. I fought against the pull of fear, pushing forward. I wasn't the only one in danger. The figures in the clearing were caught in something darker than I could comprehend. Would running even help me? I quickened my pace, adrenaline surging through my veins as I burst from the tree line and into the open. But I didn't stop. The road ahead shimmered in the moonlight, and I kept running until the sharp turn of the path forced me to stop. I leaned against a tree, panting, trying to catch my breath. The chill in the air cut through my clothes, but it was the sensation of being followed that made my skin crawl. After a few moments, I heard something rustling in the underbrush behind me. I turned, heart racing, expecting the figures or worse. Instead, I saw a dog, matted fur and dirty, but alive. It stood there, staring at me with wary eyes. "Go away," I whispered, vaguely hoping it'd listen. It tilted its head, clearly not understanding, but slowly approached, sniffing the air. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye further down the path. A shadow, lighter than the night around it, darted between the trees. I stepped cautiously in that direction, curiosity battling with fear. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being led to something significant. Maybe it was the key to what had refreshed the villagers' watchful eyes. The pendant in my pocket felt hot against my skin, a constant reminder of my choice. As I moved deeper along the path, the shadows thickened again. I glanced back to see if the dog had followed, but it hadn't. I felt alone, cut off from everything familiar in this town. Outside the safety of my home, the forest now felt alive, like a predator waiting patiently for its prey. Then a new sound emerged, a low buzzing, like 1,000 insects rising to meet me. The air vibrated. Fear prickled at my neck again. Whatever was in those woods wasn't done with me yet. That's when I saw it. A glimmering structure jutting from the earth, partially hidden, which looked strikingly familiar. I was drawn to the glimmering structure like a moth to a flame. It was a stone archway, ramshackle and overgrown, but the carving on its surface was unmistakable. Intricate symbols and shapes that seemed to dance in the moonlight. They matched the pendant in my pocket. I hesitated. My first instinct was to flee, but the curiosity was overwhelming. I stepped closer, my breath shaky, and reached out a hand to touch the cold stone. The moment my fingers grazed the surface, a shiver ran through me. It felt alive, vibrating softly beneath my touch. Suddenly the buzzing grew louder, filling the air like a swarm of agitated bees. Panic surged in my chest. I pulled my hand back, stepping away from the archway. It loomed in front of me, imposing yet captivating, like it was waiting for something, or someone. Then out of the shadows I caught a glimpse of movement. My heart raced as I turned, expecting to see the figures from the clearing. Instead, it was a man, older, with eyes that pierced through the darkness. He was dressed in worn, tattered clothing, and his face was rough. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice trembling. But he seemed unfazed. He stepped forward slowly, hands raised as if to show he meant no harm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low but steady. There was a weight to his words, as if he carried the burden of secrets far too heavy for anyone to bear. "Why? What is this place?" I demanded, conscious of the buzzing echoing around us. He glanced at the archway, then back at me, his expression troubled. "It's a gateway," he whispered. "Between our world and theirs. You're drawn to it, aren't you?" I didn't respond. My heart was pounding, and the realization sent a thrill of dread through me. I had to get away from there. I turned, but the woods fell silent. The shadows deepened, and I could feel eyes watching me from every direction. "Wait," the man called, taking a step forward. "You don't understand the danger." But I took off. I bolted toward the tree line, branches slapping against my skin as I ran. The low buzzing crescendoed, vibrating deep in my bones. I could hear him shouting behind me. But I didn't look back. The world around me blurred as I stumbled through the underbrush. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, and soon I found myself in a tangle of roots and fallen branches. I cursed under my breath, struggling to get my bearings. Then I heard it. The howl came again, more guttural this time, echoing through the trees. My breath hitched. Whatever had been lurking in the woods was closing in, emboldened by my fear. I pressed forward, adrenaline flooding my system, when I suddenly tripped over something and fell hard onto the forest floor. I lay there, gasping for air, and tried to scramble up. That's when I noticed what I had tripped over, a pile of bones, jagged and bleached white in the moon's glow. Fear threatened to freeze me in place, but the howl intensified, forcing me to push away the overwhelming horror. As I stumbled to my feet, I caught sight of movement between the trees. Something pale and ghostly slipped just out of reach, a fleeting glimpse that sent chills racing through my spine. I realized then that I was not the only one being called to that archway. I tore through the woods, desperate to escape the gathering darkness. I had to find the road, had to get away from whatever was behind me. But just as I burst into a small clearing, everything went dark. The canopy overhead swallowed the light. I froze in place, dread pooling in my stomach as shadows shifted around me. They were no longer just whispers. They were here, closing in. I stood frozen, enveloped in a heavy darkness. The flickering shadows danced around me, twisting and contorting in ways that couldn't be human. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I had to move, but every instinct screamed at me to stay still, to not draw attention to myself. A low rustling came from behind me, and I spun around, feeling the cold sweat freeze on my back. Panic surged through me as I scanned the periphery of the clearing, looking for any sign of movement. That's when I saw it. A figure emerging from the darkness. It was hunched, almost skeletal, the outline barely distinguishable from the night. I took a step back but stumbled again, this time my foot landing on something warm and rotten. I gasped and pulled back, my courage faltering as the shadows swirled closer. The figure advanced, and I could feel its gaze boring into me, heavy and suffocating. "Get away from me!" I yelled, my voice cracking. The figure paused. The rustling stopped. "Do you not see?" A voice rasped, gravelly and hollow, coming from somewhere within the darkness. It sounded almost familiar, like the faint echo of a nightmare. "You want to turn back, but you cannot." I opened my mouth to retort, but choked back my words. The shadows around me seemed to breathe, drawing closer still. "What do you want?" I managed to ask, forcing the words past my fear. But the figure remained silent, unmoving. I felt the weight of its stare. My pulse raced and desperation bubbled in my gut. I needed to escape. I had to. Before I could think, I darted to the side, away from the figure that loomed in front of me. I lunged toward the tree line, the familiar sting of branches about to whip against my face. Suddenly, the world around me shifted. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying whispers that slithered like ice along my skin. I stumbled forward, the buzz now intensifying, drowning out my thoughts. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something glimmering in the underbrush. I hesitated, torn between fleeing and investigating. Some part of me sensed there could be something important about it. The pendant seemed to vibrate in my pocket, as if sensing the energy radiating from it. I knelt, hands shaking as I pushed aside leaves and debris. What lay beneath was a small silver key, intricately decorated. For a brief moment, the shadows retreated, as if they feared this key. A part of me felt that this might be the answer, perhaps even my way to understand what was happening. But even as I clutched it, the darkness crept in again, and a piercing howl filled the air. My stomach dropped. The figure was now at my back. I could feel its breath, hot and rancid. "A price must be paid," it whispered. "You must choose the key or your life." I froze, the weight of its words paralyzing me. The shadows surged around me, encircling me like a tightening noose. I glanced down at the key, then back at the figure as I grappled with the impossibility of my situation. That's when I realized something. The pendant. It was not merely a trinket, it was a connection, a map to what lay behind that archway. The decision hit me like a thunderclap, and I knew what I had to do. But was it already too late? I took a shaky breath, desperation clawing at my throat. The figure's presence was suffocating, its intentions twisting in my mind like a cruel riddle. My instincts screamed at me to flee with the key, but the weight of its gaze pinned me in place. "What do you mean, my life?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The shadows shifted and the skeletal figure took a step closer. A rancid stench wafted over me that made my stomach churn. "The key will unlock a truth," it rasped. "But the truth comes at a cost. Choose wisely." I felt the key clutched tightly in my palm. It glinted dully in the moonlight, almost like it was urging me to act. My mind raced. What truth could justify the horror that surrounded me? The howl echoed again, this time closer, and a chill shot down my spine. I couldn't stay here. I had no idea if the key had real significance or was just a trap. I recalled the sensation from the pendant in my pocket. It vibrated again, a subtle, insistent hum. The connection felt real. I made a decision. I had to risk it. I bolted toward the tree line, key still in hand, feeling the pull of the shadows behind me. The figure snarled, the sound scraping its throat as it pursued me. I ran blindly, branches whipping against my skin, but I had to reach that archway. As I neared the edge of the woods, my heart dropped when I stumbled upon a massive structure rising from the dark. An old stone archway. It loomed before me like a gateway out of the nightmare, vines sprawling up its weathered sides. The pendant pulsed with surprising warmth against my chest. I skidded to a halt, heart racing, and turned back, the figure still closing in fast. In a moment of wild courage, I held up the key. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. It momentarily paused, eyes narrowing as if evaluating me. And then I remembered. The pendant, the symbol engraved on it, resembled one etched on the archway. Was this the key to understanding both? Could it lead to my escape? Or further into danger? The figure hissed, suddenly more animated. "The key fits the archway, but do you dare unlock what lies beyond?" "Maybe I have no choice," I yelled back. I stepped toward the archway, instincts firing. I inserted the key into a hidden slot, and it slid in with a satisfying click. The entire structure trembled at my touch, shadows swirling fiercely around me as if trying to pull me back. As the archway began to glow, I felt a pulse of energy surge through me, the pendant thrumming in harmony. I stole a glance behind me. The figure's expression twisted into a ghastly snarl, venom dripping from its fangs. Before I could fully process my next move, I turned the key. The archway swung open, revealing not just a path, but a peculiar light that beckoned me forward. But was I ready for what lay ahead? I took a deep breath and stepped through the threshold, heart pounding. As the darkness hissed around me, I knew I was leaving one nightmare behind. But what awaited me on the other side? The moment I stepped through the archway, everything changed. The air felt lighter, yet charged with an unexplainable energy. I blinked against the brightness, the shadows of the woods fading behind me. Where once there was darkness, now lay an expansive meadow littered with wildflowers and vivid colors. It was strangely peaceful and unsettling all at once. Then I noticed the silence. The only sound was the soft rustle of grass beneath my feet. No howls, no dark figures. I took a cautious step forward, every instinct on high alert, ready for betrayal. Just ahead, I spotted crystalline structures jutting out of the ground almost like jagged teeth. I couldn't help but feel drawn to them, but my feet felt rooted to the soil. I lifted the pendant and saw that it resonated lightly, glowing in sync with the formations ahead. It was then I noticed writings etched into the ground surrounding the crystals. They swirled and twisted like words in a forgotten language. I knelt down and traced my fingers over the carvings. They felt warm to the touch. The pendant vibrated again, almost eager, pushing me to decode their secrets. Were these warnings? Or perhaps clues? As I tried to focus on the strange script, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned suddenly, heart racing, but found nothing. My breath quickened and I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. Was something observing me from the tall grass? I stood up sharply. "Hello?" I called out, voice echoing in the silence. A chill ran through me as I waited. The meadow seemed too serene, too quiet. And then, out of the stillness, an amorphous shape began to take form before me, wobbling like a mirage. My knees trembled slight, but I didn't back away. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. The shape solidified into a humanoid figure, but its features remained indistinct. It wore tattered clothing, and where its face should be, there were only shadows. I stumbled back a step, feeling a wave of unease wash over me. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What is this place?" The figure raised its hand, and I felt the warmth of the pendant surge again. Then it whispered, "You have unlocked a path, but now you must confront the echoes of your choices." Echoes? What choices? My mind raced back to the dark figure, the key, the pendant. What had I unleashed? A deep rumble pierced the silence, and the ground beneath me shook. The crystals flared brightly, casting kaleidoscopic colors across the meadow. Panic struck as I staggered back. "What is happening?" "Embrace it," the figure urged softly, although its voice seemed layered, multiple tones intertwining like a warning chant. "Your journey has just begun." Before I could respond, a blinding light enveloped me, and instinctively I reached for the pendant, hoping it would shield me or guide me. And then everything went dark. I gasped as I came to. The darkness pulled back slowly, revealing a swirling fog. My heart raced as I struggled to sit up. I was no longer in the meadow. Instead, I found myself in a narrow alleyway, hard brick walls looming high on either side. The fresh air of the open field was replaced by the musty scent of damp stone. I rubbed my eyes, hoping I had just been imagining things. But as I focused, dread crawled up my spine. Chilling whispers echoed around me, seeping through the shadows, like fragments of conversations from an unseen crowd. "It's watching," a voice hissed. "They all do, you know," another replied. I felt suddenly exposed, as if every soul in this place could see straight through me. Scrambling to my feet, I glanced around, but the alley was empty. My pendant hung heavily around my neck, its glow now a faint, flickering light in the gloom. I reached out to touch the cool wall, feeling the rough surface under my fingers. It steadied me, reminding me I was still here, still real. Then I caught sight of something on the ground. A small object lay partly hidden by a pile of leaves. Curiosity pulled me closer. I crouched down and picked it up. It was an ornate key, the same intricate design as the one I'd seen before. What was it doing here? My pulse quickened as I realized this was no ordinary key. Just then the whispers grew louder, warping into frantic murmurs. "You shouldn't have come," one voice warned. "She's lost forever," another stated coldly. My breath quickened. I felt a chill creep into my bones. "What have I done? What does this all mean?" I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the echoing alley. A shadow flickered at the edge of my vision, making me turn sharply. A figure stood against the far wall, half illuminated by the dim light. It appeared human, yet something felt off. It wore a hood, obscuring its face. "You've already made your choice," it said, voice low and raspy. "Who are you?" I demanded, keeping my grip tight on the key. "You sought the truth." The figure stepped forward, and I froze. But some truths are better left buried. My heart thudded as I took a hesitant step back. "I don't want to hear any warnings, I need answers," I barked. Answers come at a cost, the hooded figure replied. The question is, are you willing to pay? Before I could respond, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature dropped and a strange energy pulsed through the key in my hand. The shadows around me twisted and darkened, coiling like snakes preparing to strike. I grabbed the pendant, its faint light flickering as I gripped it tightly. What do you want from me? I shouted into the darkness. In answer, the figure gestured towards the deepest shadows of the alley, and with a sudden jolt, I felt an irresistible pull in that direction. The whispers swelled, blending into a cacophony of voices urging me on. I stood there, torn between fear and a relentless need for answers. My choice loomed ahead. Then I saw it, something glimmering in the depths of the darkness. I took a hesitant step forward, the whispers rising around me like a storm. The glimmer drew me in, a beacon in the oppressive shadows. I tightened my grip on the key and the pendant, needing to ground myself. The figure in the hood watched, its gaze steady and unnerving. Don't be fooled. What glimmers can blind you, it warned, though the low rasp did nothing to alleviate my resolve. I'm not afraid, I lied, shaking off the pulse of panic that crawled up my spine. I stepped closer, curiosity burning brightly against the chill in the air. As I approached, the outline of the shimmering object became clearer, a small chest bound in tarnished metal. Its surface was engraved with intricate designs mirroring those on both the key and the pendant. A familiar warmth radiated from the pendant, guiding my hand closer. I fumbled with the latch, fingers trembling as I pulled it open. Inside lay an assortment of strange tokens. Each one carried an energy. Some felt nostalgic as though I had touched them in another life, while others radiated cold emptiness. A sense of urgency pulsed through me, a warning blended with a compelling force that begged me to choose wisely. What is this? I whispered, my voice barely breaking the resonating echoes around me. The remnants of souls who've sought what you seek, the hooded figure replied, stepping closer to peer into the chest. They came with questions. Only a few returned with answers. The weight of its words hung heavily in the air. I remembered the whispers of the townsfolk, their warnings layered beneath layers of truth. Had I stumbled into a larger web spun by fate? What had I awakened by stepping through the archway? Heart pounding, I rifled through the tokens, drawn to a small glass vial at the bottom of the chest. Inside lay a swirling, iridescent mist that seemed alive, almost beckoning. As I touched the cool glass, a vision flashed before my eyes. Children laughing, a celebration in the woods. But it faded just as quickly as it had come. Then the dark figure surged closer, almost desperate. Do not let it fool you. That vial holds the essence of what was lost. It can also lead you to despair. I pulled my hand back, the sensation of fear mixed with curiosity swirling in my gut. Would opening the vial shine a light on this strange town's secrets? Or would it drag me deeper into its shadows? I need to know the truth, I explained, my determination propelling me forward. I need to understand what happened to the town, to those children. Truth is fickle, it warned. But if you must know, the price is steep. What will you give to unveil reality? Before I could respond, the shadows around us surged, swirling like ghosts released from their chains. Whispers filled my ears, urgent and chaotic, urging me to act. In that tumultuous moment, an idea struck, a risk to counter the risk. I pulled out the ornate key, feeling its weight like a burden. I want to unlock my own truth, I declared boldly, not just the illusions you all weave. The figure blinked, surprise flickering in the depths of the shadows. You seek to challenge the very fabric of this place. I'm not here to play by the rules, I shot back, heart racing. I'll take whatever comes. Let me see. The ground trembled slightly, dark tendrils swirling around me, hesitating as if weighing their next move. The hooded figure contemplated, then nodded slowly. Very well. The truth you seek comes at your own peril. Open the vial and confront what you've chosen, but understand, it comes with no guarantees of mercy. With a deep breath, I uncorked the vial, the swirling mist escaping like vaporous spirits swirling up toward the sky. The world around me cracked and shifted. Suddenly, I was engulfed in a kaleidoscope of visions, images flooding my mind. I stumbled, seeing flashes of joy, laughter, and warmth, tinged with shadows that twisted the edges of my memories. The faces of children flickered in and out, but as I reached to grasp them, shadows swallowed them whole, their laughter shifting to cries of confusion. Then everything froze. I felt pulled back into that dreadful clearing with the altar, the figures surrounding me, and the whispers rising into a deafening wail. "You've awakened the past." The hooded figure's voice cut through the chaos. "Now serve your sentence or embrace what remains." "What does that mean?" I shouted into the void, panic igniting my senses. "I've survived. I'm still here." Yet behind me, the darkness roared. The townsfolk, shadows of their former selves, loomed near, watching with hollow eyes. I wanted to scream, but my voice was lost amid the roiling memories. As I stood at the precipice, I knew I had to choose to confront what had been awakened. Would I stand my ground or succumb to the shadows of despair? In that aching moment, I felt the pendant's warmth return, wrapping around me, a tether to my existence. It throbbed like a heartbeat, urging me to stand firm. I raised my chin, facing my past, my choices, and the truth that would not let me go. "You won't take me. I'll find my way out of this." The swirling shadows hesitated, as did the hooded figure. Would the ghosts of my fears lose their grip? Would I be the one to break the cycle? Or would I too become a part of the town's secrets, forever silence? The light flickered, brightening with intensity. I took a step forward toward the entity, my choice clear. "I'm ready," I declared, and as the last words left my lips, reality shattered around me. My fate collided with the town's echoes, and the wood's lingering laughter became a cacophony of uncertainty. And then, I fell into darkness.